It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Grow your emergency fund.
Yeah, this is one, this is actually a good one. I like this as a New Year's resolution because if you're someone out there who's flying naked, the emergency fund is the thing that protects you. It's the thing that prevents you from derailing your entire financial circumstance.
We've, you guys know, if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, you can download your free financial order of operation resource. And here's what I think is interesting. Number 4, because the number 1 is deductibles covered. That's just making sure you have enough cash to, if big things happen to you, you're all right. And then number 4 is emergency reserves. This is so important that it gets 2 slots out of our 9 to focus on this. And then here's the other thing I think is it's humbling. I've screwed this up tremendously all through the years, and I'll get to a few of these examples. But the big one I want to kind of intro it with, just because you have access to cash now, does not mean you truly have emergency reserves.
Exactly
right. And I want to tell you 2 risks that I think you have to be careful of. If you have a home equity line, that you have a checkbook or debit card, because we're back to doing these crazy behaviors we were doing back before the Great Recession, that is not an effective emergency reserves. Nope. Number 2, if you have a portfolio of investment assets and it's in a taxable account, you're like, well, I could always just go sell some stocks, or I could go sell a mutual fund or an index fund. That will be my emergency reserves. No, because if the market's getting crushed and it's down 20, 25%, the last place you want to go get cash is from those assets that are now down 25% from where they were. You're going to be disgusted with yourself that's where you're having to pull the money out for emergencies. Because remember, downturns, drama, these are all miserable, lonely things that never travel around by themselves. Misery loves company. So what you'll typically find is bad stuff travels in packs. You'll have downsides in the economy. You'll have job losses. You'll have the stock market get crushed. You'll have the real estate market get crushed. And they'll all happen at the same time because, like I said, misery loves company. Prepare. Do not disrespect financial order of operations and the power of emergency reserves.
So as you're sitting there thinking, okay, you've sold me, Brian. You told me I got to have it. It matters. Yeah, it stinks that my cash is paying next to nothing right now, but it's not there to make me money. It's there to keep me protected. The next question someone would naturally have is, okay, well, how do I know what my emergency reserves should be? Well, our answer very simply is it depends on where you are in your financial journey. Are you someone who's early on in the accumulation phase, or are you someone who's later on in retirement? What does your marital status look like? What does your income situation look like?
Well, let's give them some, because everybody knows. The typical, if you go read any financial book or you listen to any talking head, they're going to say 3 to 6 months.
That's the given.
No. You just did it. 3 to 6 months is the general guidance. How do you know if you're 3? How do you know if you're 6?
Yeah, so one I would think of that's pretty easy. If you have people depending on your income specifically, like maybe you are the higher income earner in your household, or maybe you have a stay-at-home spouse, or there are things that are pulling on your income really substantially, that if it were to go away tomorrow, you would, 1, be in trouble, and 2, have a hard time finding another job at a similar pay scale. You should probably err towards that 6 month. You should probably carry a little bit heavier emergency reserve.
So if you're the big breadwinner in your house, everybody's kind of like, just say you're like that big earner, and then you have another spouse that's helping with the kiddos.
Sure.
That one should be closer to 6 months.
Absolutely.
And if you're in a technical job, it's going to take a long time to get a job. How about somebody, because in America now, a lot more couples, everybody's working. Everybody's trying to save money. So how about those situations?
If you're a single individual and you're highly employable, meaning if you were to lose your job today, you could go find another job pretty quickly, 3 months might be your ticket. Or if you're a married person and both of you make around the same income, or it's potential that if either one of you were to lose your jobs, you'd still have enough to keep the lights on and pay the bills, then you probably could shrink it down to a 3 month or so emergency reserve.
And I'll throw one other caveat before we get to retirees, because that's kind of unique, is that if you are, and I said this already, but it might even go beyond 6 months, I have found, like a lot of my neighbors, when you get to a station in life and you're in such a specialized technical executive or some role, you might have to move to get another job that pays you. That needs to be built into. So you're probably, if you are at that level now of success, that if you lost your job, that you'd have to physically relocate your entire life to get the same job, you probably need to create a little extra margin to make sure, because your situation's kind of specialized. Now that leads to another specialized group. Retirees, should they do 3 to 6 months? That seems kind of crazy when you're living off the money.
Absolutely not, because no matter how well you've planned, no matter how prepared you are for retirement, there's going to be a psychological shift that happens when you go from working with your hands and your back and your feet to now counting on your army of dollar bills to work for you. What you want to do is set yourself up for success, given that psychological change is going to happen. So what we always tell our retirees is that depending on your circumstance, you should have in cash anywhere from 12 to 18 months of liquid cash of expenses. So whatever it costs you to run your household, you should have that amount sitting in your emergency reserve.
And I would even go further, is that there's one thing in emergency reserves, but you might want to have well over 36 months of easy, safe assets like fixed income or other things that you can get to very quickly and very easily.